2, 3, 4. Coming to you live from the Who's Your Daddy Roundup at the fabulous West Baden Springs Hotel in Indiana. And we're now featuring talented amp conceptualizer and pedal maestro, Mr. TAVO Vega from the wilds of Southern California. We're going to talk about TAVO's amps, which are well known, and some of his pedals, which are perhaps even better known, especially about the new Mystery Brain BS301. But first, TAVO, I got to know. Where did Nocturne Brain come from?
On the Brian Setzer Dirty Boogie album, the song Hollywood Nocturne. In the song, in the way the song's produced, when it gets to the solo, you can literally feel the engineer slide the faders up. And that solo just really hit me, and that's kind of where it came from.
And then you came up with your flagship pedal, the original, which, correct me if I'm wrong, as I often am, but is in a way the preamp from a Roland Space Echo 301.
Yes,
and you came up with the name Brain Seltzer for it as kind of a play on Brian Setzer, which didn't actually impinge on the copyright to his name.
No, sir.
No, it did not. So there we had both Nocturne and Brain.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what came first, pedals or amps in your
pedals. The preamp. I've been chasing the Brian Setzer sound, and I knew I needed the Gretsch, and just by I want to say divine intervention, a Gretsch SSU came into my hands, and I soon realized that I needed much more than just the Gretsch to get Brian Setzer's kind of signature gritchy sound. And then horse traded a bunch of other things and found a 1963 Fender G6B amp. And so I had the amp, and I had the Gretsch, and I thought I was set. And then loving Forum fans, made it clear to me that I could never have the Brian Setzer sound because I didn't have his fingers and his talent. But that's not what I was looking for. What I was looking for is he had this uncanny thing where he'd be flat picking, and he'd tuck the pick and start Travis picking, and instead of that fleshy kind of round sound you get from your Travis picking, that bright twangy thing was staying there. And so I started looking at his hands, his bone structure, and the way that he put the pick and his hand position and all that, and worked on all that, and it still got closer, but there was something missing. And so I was out of work at the time, and a friend on the forum sent me his Roland RS301 Space Echo. And he just said, why don't you take a look at this and try to find where the preamp is in this thing, and reverse engineer it. Roland isn't making it anymore, and see if that's the thing that you need. And so I got the Space Echo, and the preamp, or the tape echo, the mechanical tape echo, really didn't work. And so I knew right away, it's like that sound's not coming, or that response isn't coming from that part of the Space Echo. And so I found this old Army engineer that worked on amps for some friends, and we took it over there, and he took it all apart, and he pointed over, he goes, that little part right there, he goes, that and that and that, he goes, that's the preamp. And he goes, I don't know why you want this thing, it doesn't seem like it's anything really special. And I just like, if you could, give me a basic circuit, I think I can turn it into, what I'm looking for. And Brian Setzer, he uses really long guitar cables, because if you take a, whatever Gretsch and you plug it into one of those old Space Echoes with a regular 15-foot cord, it's kind of dark and muddy. And I don't know if it's by accident or design, but Setzer was performing with 50-foot, 100-foot cables. And if you take, two 25-foot cables and you plug them into a pedal that's got a true bypass on it, you've got, 50 feet of cable. And that's exactly what I did. I started playing, and there it was. That was it. It's like I wasn't Brian Setzer, I didn't have his talent, but that response, that awesome dynamic, it was there. And so that's kind of how it all began.
And that was the foundation of the original Brain Seltzer, and then what followed the Brain Seltzer. That was kind of voiced for Filtertrons.
It was voiced for Filtertrons, and it was voiced for the original, blonde Bassman amp. And when I was doing it, I made it clear, it's like, I have a blonde Bassman, I have a Gretsch with Filtertrons, and at that time, TV Jones had, was it 2000 when I was first experimenting with stuff. I even had TV Jones pickups, and I still didn't have that thing until I got the pedal. But I lost my train of thought here. That's why I have the mystery brain. So mystery train.
What followed the Seltzer?
That's what you asked me.
Yeah. The
Dyno Brain. Because I was focused on one thing, a bunch of guys started buying this, and they didn't have a basement, and they didn't have. Some of them didn't even have Gretches. And
I had Dynasonics.
That's Gretsch. Yeah. But they didn't, they were, it's like, oh, we want Brian Setzer's sound too. And then I started panicking, because it's like, well, this thing is voiced to work with this amp and this guitar. So I went back to the drawing board with it, and got myself some Dynasonics and my Strat out, and I got it to work really nice with that. And about that time, I got some questions from a recording company that works with Brian, and they basically kind of said, if you'd like to keep doing this as a cottage industry, Brian says it's fine using that name, and I just decided that I should probably change the name if I wanted to go for it, and how I wanted to do it, or wherever fate would take me. So because it worked really great with the Dynasonics, I called it the Dyno Brain. And it ended up being something that works with all guitars and amplifiers.
Well, from my perspective, with all the respect and love in the world for Brian Setzer, it wasn't about my chasing his tone that I had never analyzed as meticulously and scientifically and obsessively as it might be said you have. But what I got out of the Dyno Brain was I just sounded better. I sounded cleaner. I sounded more present. Finger picking that I'd already been doing, which had been obscured by my own sloppiness, was suddenly, more apparent to my ear, and that let me kind of attempt to refine what I was doing to bring it out more. And we can probably demonstrate that effect with this pedal, because you've got the preamp built into the 301.
Yes.
So I'm going to turn off the Echo, and we have the preamp off now, and we have a Gretsch with Dynasonics. So there's the particular bass tone of the instrument, and if we turn on the preamp, I've always wanted to have my finger in a video like the pedal guys do. And suddenly, whatever I'm doing is just more there. So I want to thank you for that. It's one of the pedals that you never turn off until you want to suck worse.
Yeah, well, it's a simple circuit, and it's more or less a full range preamp. And I really don't play in a rockabilly band myself. I play in a praise and worship band at church, and I can't pray too loud. I can't play too loud, but I still want the full range of my sound. And so I can keep the amps fairly low and turn the preamp up, and I've got nice tight bass. And
that's right.
You know,
somehow you cut more,
yeah,
without losing the body.
Yeah, and I have to play with different drummers. You know, the musicians kind of move through, and I have to fight dynamically to lead the band, and that's kind of, it's just a helpful tool.
So we'll come back to the mystery brain, but tell us a little bit about the amps. I know the blonde shell's been around for a while. This particular one with the Cowboy Tolex is quite striking, and this lovely green covering on it.
Well, you know, part of the chasing of Brian Setzer's tone, I'd always loved the blonde amps, and I love the Who using the blonde amps, and the Beach Boys, and you know, Brian Setzer grabbing this didn't seem to make a lot of sense. I didn't really understand, you know, why that amplifier was so important to him, and that the 212. I mean, I think it was the 1996 in a Guitar Player magazine. He was saying how, you know, Strat guys like spongy amps, but for a hollow body, he needed an amp that would interact with the speaker, and he liked that this was post-Tweed but pre-blackface, and so it still had some attributes of the Tweed, and kind of the punch and authority of the blackface. And then he also said that he needed the closed back 212 cab for his response, and so, you know, that, and obviously I ended up with the blonde. And the bass channel is a neat sound, but it was that normal channel that seemed to work with pedals, and obviously with my preamp. So I had a friend on a forum, Top Hat forum actually, and he had just got into amp building pretty quick. He was a you know, very talented builder. And so I was saying, you know, I wish I could just take my basement and saw it in half, because I don't care. I don't need the bass channel. I'm using the normal channel. You know, I set it at 2 and I have my preamp on, and away I go. And it's like that. But I need this sound. I've gotten used to it with my Gretsch. You know, that's the sound. And so he's like, well, you know, why don't we give it a stab? You know, if you've got the money, I've got the time, and we just started going back and forth with ideas and that, and I'd say, well, it needs this, it needs that, and we got together. He was from Portland. He flew out to where I live in Riverside, and we sat down pulling parts out, soldering things in, and fighting, and arguing about stuff, and until there was the sound. You know, we had the basement here, and this amp, and, you know, 212 cabs. And it's like, there it is, that's the sound. And I got it to be a little more responsive at a lower level. And the one thing I wanted was a reverb, and this is a single tube reverb, but I didn't want a blackface sound. I just wanted a little bit of ambience and dynamic to, like in this room, this is a really carpeted room, and just having this reverb in here, it just makes it a little more dynamic. But it sits behind what I love the most is, you know, echo, delay. And so this really just serves, you know, the effect pedals.
The basement's 45 watts?
It's a 45 watt.
And you're 45 watts here.
Yeah, 45 watts here.
26L6s.
We put a switch in the back, again because of the Gretsch. I like tellies too. So we put a switch in the back, and it's called plank and F-hole. So, because that's always been a joke, the bands, you know, calling each other F-holes. But, well, I don't know, maybe not your band. But
it's worse than that.
it allowed me to switch on stage between my Gretsch, my trusty SSU, and my Telecaster.
Does it peel back the high end a little?
It actually leans out the bass a little bit, and I feel like some of the gain, it drops back with the gain. And so, again, with the preamp, I can turn the preamp a bit more, and when I'm going to stomp on, you know, like one of my favorite boost pedals is a Tim pedal, to my delay. Tim Harman pedal.
No, it's not.
But so that's pretty much it for the basement. And I think, well, what I should mention, moving on with that, is the relationship did not remain harmonious with my friend and he decided he just didn't want to bother with amps anymore. And I had been watching what Jared Lyle was building on the forums, and I had bought a fuzz pedal from him and kind of began a online friendship with him. And so I asked him, I said, you know, would you be interested in taking a look at my blonde shell? That's why it looks a little dirty, because it gets used for testing all my pedals and gets played every weekend and whatever. And so anyway, I sent him the prototype and said, what do you think? You know, you think you can replicate this for me? And you know, if there's any improvements you might add. And we put something together, and he does the building of the cabinets and chassis for me, and I get them, and if it's a combo, I put the speakers in and have to fool around with the tubes until I get everything right, and then I'll play it for a couple 10 hours, crank it up and make sure it's burning properly, and off it goes. And ironically, these I never thought I'd be producing amps and sending them around the world, but we've gone to the Netherlands and England and Australia, and it's kind of crazy how that's taken off. And soon after that, I had run into a gentleman. I knew T.K. Smith had played for Big Sandy in the early formation of the band, but I ended up finding him online as an industrial designer looking at mid-century modern furniture. And he had his Telecaster there, this crazy Telecaster with these Paul Bigsby pickups he had designed. And I got a hold of him, and I ended up ordering pickups from him and kind of struck up a friendship with him. And I was over at his place, and he had this whole collection of vintage Gibson amps. And I had never played a vintage Gibson amp, I grew up on my dad's little Magnatone Varsity. And so there's a sound to those amps. It's kind of what I say, it's kind of furry, but the dynamics pop out of the sound. And you think about the Texas Playboys and Eldon Shamblin. Most of the time he was playing a Strat through a Gibson EH-185. And Charlie Christian, of course, with the EH-185. And here at TK's house, he had an original, with a field coil speaker and everything. And he's like, would you like to plug into it? And I plugged the telly that he had put all the stuff in for me. I plugged it into that amp, and I was like, oh my gosh! I've tried to get this sound, forever with different overdrive pedals and stuff, and even tweaking my blonde amp and messing with tubes, and that sound isn't happening. And he goes, well, it may be because these are old metal envelope tubes from the 40s and a field coil speaker, but it's like, no, there's something more to it. And so anyway, I went home and I started researching this stuff, and I ended up buying 3 of those amplifiers. They were all broken up. One was a barn find, literally. I had heard about barn finds with cars, but I didn't really know what it meant. But I got this amp. It had hay in it. It had rat fur in it, and roaches and spider webs. And
what year were the originals designed?
The first ones were actually the label on my original one that has both a bass and treble control. It has EH-150 on it, but it's an early EH-185, so 1939, late 39.
And then Gibson built essentially the same circuit till when?
I think that it petered out in 42.
Really?
It didn't last very long.
Really?
Yeah. They have a really interesting heritage with their amplifiers. But the hurdle for me was no field coil speaker. I mean, I found a guy, and he built me a couple speakers and this little device that I haven't really tried to produce yet, but you can have a field coil speaker in any that type of amplifier if you want. But I had to start buying up speakers left and right to get something that sounded close to TK's field coil EH-185.
And by field coil, for those of us who aren't quite sure, it's a speaker where the voice coil assembly is powered.
Yes. that guy could say more about it.
Yeah,
But,
okay.
I didn't spend a lot of time with it. My focus was how can I replicate this using any speaker, just a PM speaker. So I ended up with Tone Tubby, kind of just like out of desperation because it seemed like everything was too bright. It's a very bright amp, even though it breaks up early. You know, Charlie Christian just kind of had a darker sound, and I don't really know, but I'm guessing he probably rolled back the tone control to get that warmer sound and bite fur, as I call it. But as a kind of last-ditch effort, I was looking for an American company, 100% American-built speaker, and I had heard about Carlos Santana, of all people, using Tone Tubby speakers and that brown sound. So I ended up ordering the 50-watt hemp cone Alnico speaker and put it in there, and because of the hemp cone, it stays tighter in the low end, you know, with the punch that this thing has, but the high end was attenuated a bit. It was smoothed out, and when you turn it up, that sound was there. And so with Jared's help and my irritating obsession, we put together, you know, this amplifier built, you know, modeled off actually H185 amplifiers. And here we have it. It's the Moonshine 39.
Yeah, this is my first experience with it, but and I was playing through this amp in the little intro ditty, and these are the settings that we were using. I was on 2 on the so-called mic preamp side, and the tone is up to 9, so it had definitely had some bite and would warm up a lot by backing that down. But I just don't know what happens if you turn this amp up further.
It just gets, it's got a lot of snarl and bite.
I suppose we could find out.
Yeah, we could turn it up.
We could we turn it up?
I don't know how his mic will work on that.
Well, if we don't overrun the mic, then it doesn't count. That's a 4.
So the way the tone control works on this amplifier is the full sonic spectrum is when it's actually all the way up, at least on the models after the original tone and bass model. So let's say the 1941 model, it had a single tone control. So this is where your big fat bass sound, the full range sound is there. And then as you start going back, it leans out.
Both ends.
And so it's a little more mid-range, all the way to being very lean. But then if we crank it up, I want to blow the speakers out of the...
What you got on the Mystery Brain, what it's about, what it's supposed to accomplish?
We've got an atomic brain mixed with a digital tape emulator. Looks like there's a whole lot of knobs on here, but my preamp is literally here, you know, with the bass cut and the preamp volume like you have on the atomic brain, and with the Abbey mode, which is kind of an input gain boost. But I just, over the years, since I tend to have kind of a thing with the rockabilly, I've got a lot of rockabilly musicians and honky tonkers and stuff going, can't you make us a box, you know, with with a delay pedal in it, and I just kept going back to them and going, I'm not that smart. You know, you need someone who really knows what they're doing to
Because
build.
these are guys who don't want to use pedals at all.
Yeah,
So they
yeah.
definitely don't want to.
Yeah, and you know, they finally came to a point where like, oh wow, we really like that brain preamp, but it's like we still want a delay. And so I just, over the years, I've been fooling around with different pedals and asking other builders, you know, are you interested in doing a kind of co-op thing? And no one was really interested until just this last year. I found this young man that was into space echoes and Echoplex, and he had designed this this Digi Echo that's a tape emulator. And so I wrote to him and I said, you know, what would you think about, you know, if this works for me, I'd kind of like to put it together with my preamp. And if this works, maybe we can work together. You know, maybe we can do something together. And so he sent me one, and I fooled around with it and took a bunch of parts out of it, and then, you know, sent it back to him and said, you know, if we change this, and, you know, my usual thing. He was kind of at a loss because he plays in a praise and worship band too, but he didn't really know anything about rockabilly, and he didn't know what was happening with that and what I wanted it for. And so we had to spend some time talking, and he finally goes, I think I know, you know, what we can do here. And so he made the changes and he sent it back, and I got a bigger box and I shoved both of them together, because one of the things that if you take anyone's preamp and you stick it in front of these digital echoes, they have a tendency to clip and the echo, and you get this crackle, and it doesn't work, you know. And so for years I've just been using an old Boss DM3 as my echo, and then more recently a Strymon D-Tape echo, which is you know, an amazing tape echo emulator. The mechanical, you know, tape players, I think it's a Benson and a Space Echo 201 and Echoplex. But anyway, I need something for me and my company, and so putting this guy's you know, little echo circuit in here, it didn't clip, doesn't crackle. In fact, it saturates more, and it sounds really, really close to my actual vintage '79 RS301 Space Echo. And so, again, I thought, this is awesome. I can now do another American business co-op, you know, like I do with Delisle Amps with this young man. And I put it out there on the Facebook forum and said, you know, would you guys be interested in this, and would you be interested if I, you know, did a pre-order thing? And I got 30 guys that wanted them, and so they pre-ordered them, and we went ahead in production with them. And of course, from the very beginning, Vince Ray has become a friend of mine, and he helped me out with all our, you know, t-shirt designs and logo designs. And he was, in fact, Vince owns the first Brain Seltzer production model. You know, he's just been a wonderful and generous friend. He said that he designed the artwork for me, and so here we have, you know, his amazing work. And I decided to go one step further and just call it the BS 301. Does that mean it's a Brain Seltzer 301? Probably not. That just is a bunch of BS? I don't know. But it is a mystery brain, and it is my atomic brain preamp with a tape echo. And it's not just a rockabilly thing. It's not just a roots rock thing. You know, in the genre of music that I play, I have to cover a wide scope of music, and I needed something that would kind of sound like the deluxe Memory Man to analog, you know, Boss pedal, and then just a real good rockabilly slapback. So that's what we have.
Time, I assume, is a delay time, and we go from 50 milliseconds,
all the way up to 600.
600 milliseconds.
Yeah.
And those repeats These fade out really nicely.
Repeats, even if you turn them up, they fade out really cool. And one other feature it had, which was important to me, is having modulation on the wet slapback.
Yeah.
For more of the spacey things, it's really fun, and you know, there's a lot of stuff that you can get out of this, vibrato and chorus. But it also has a defeatable switch. And once that's off, the modulation is out. So for the rockabilly guys, roots rock guys, you just have a quick slapback. And then for like Uncle Tim, more space rock guys, prog rock guys, we turn this back on, we get our repeats going up. And so, you know, this is even though it's kind of got a rockabilly thing going on with it, I needed something to get myself. I painted myself kind of in a corner, whereas I wanted to reach a wide variety of musicians, and like myself being a praise and worship musician, you know, just by default, there's a lot of real ethereal sounds and stuff that we needed, and so this covers that, for at least for me and what I do, you know, as a gigging musician, because really that's what I've always been, and I just kind of fell into this, and I make these things for what I use, what I play, and it's all based you know, around a Gretsch guitar. I'm going to be a fan for life for Gretsch, and that's the way it is. But if you're a Strat and Telly player,
it's all in there anyway.
Yeah.
What's the price point?
$355.
$355, and this, I suppose it's obvious, but this is the you know, slightly larger. You'll tell me what box it's in, but it's 5.5 inches wide. 5
Yeah,
inches wide.
it's like two MXR pedal boxes together.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's really compact for what you're getting. I mean, I believe this section replaces the Deluxe Memory Man.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm not trying to be a deluxe memory,
right.
But yeah, it is. But that's pretty compact for that.
Yeah.
But you know, being that this is an atomic brain, this
the
boost mode, you know, a lot of guys are using that, you know, when they're soloing to lift it up. But an interesting thing with this is that it saturates the input of the tape echo part, and it actually becomes kind of like an overdrive.
Right.
And so what I did is I put a switch in the back here that attenuates. It's kind of like a dB pad. So if you put that on, it'll stay cleaner, especially for guys playing humbuckers and stuff, and they would just rather have a clean boost. But I wanted this to be, you know, for lack of better terms, more organic, gritty, dirty, you know, because space echoes, unless you're Brian Setzer, You know, you've got a guy to keep them running tip-top shape like brand new. Most everyone else that uses Space Echoes, they cheat on us and they betray us and they break down and they're dirty or they warble, and that's kind of the fun of it.
Does it self-oscillate?
Yes, it does self-oscillate.
Oh, let's make it self-oscillate. Take it out. That's what we got for you.